FM. Just Korte, Director General for DG Employment at the European Commission. Hello. Birgit Pickel, Director General for the Africa Department at the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany. And Erik Oekslin, Director of the ILO Decent Work Team for North Africa and also currently based at the ILO Country Office for Egypt, and you're also doing Eritrea. Very welcome here on this panel. My name is Regine Qualmann. I'm heading the division for North Africa at GIZ, German Technical Cooperation. With these few introductory words, I would like to let you know one technical issue. Her Excellency, the Minister of Environment for Egypt, is joining us at a later stage here. So when she walks in, we will just ask her to come to the panel and also state a number of things we have discussed with her previously. So with that, dear Nasser, I would like to hand over to you for your greeting words. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome for all of you to our pavilion. This is an event that is gathering some of our most important partners when it comes to the very important challenge the region is facing, which is employment. And I'm a great believer that one of the most important drivers for employment creation is through a just transition for youth and women in the Mediterranean region. This is our first Mediterranean pavilion that's taking place in the COP, and it attests to the extent to which we are determined to join the regional and global climate action efforts and to find innovative solution for climate-related challenge for our region. I think you will all agree with me when I say that climate change is currently the single most serious existential threat to our livelihood and our planet, and indeed, and unfortunately, the Mediterranean region heats up 20% faster than other parts of the world, which is alarming to say the least, actually. But in the face of adversity, our spirit is life-affirming, and our commitment is unwavering, and hence our engagement in promoting just transition, a green transition that does not account for the socio-economic implication of change would never be inclusive nor sustainable. When we say leave no one behind, we keep saying it all over the place too. The brackets immediately open up to include not only a better environment and a healthier biodiversity, but also social and economic returns through the creation of decent green and blue jobs, skilling and reskilling of human capital, impact investment, and definitely a focus on youth and women as co-essential vehicle of a smart and holistic sustainable development. Just transition calls for a regular multi-stakeholder dialogue and an effective advocacy for different groups given the alarming size of the informal economy in our region. By our region, I mean the MENA region, of course. And the fact that it comprises mostly women and young people. So just transition offers a unique opportunity to unleash a huge potential for decent and inclusive work creation. Several economic sectors and industries are well positioned to offer such green jobs, including renewable energies, environmental engineering, sustainable transportation, permaculture, and waste management, just to cite a few. This is why in the last years, all UF member states have jointly agreed that we must reach sustainability through a change in our in our economies actually, with the overarching objective to support the creation of decent jobs for youth and women. This has been underlined through political commitment in 6 strongly interlinked UFM ministerial declarations, namely on the blue economy, energy, environment and climate action, research and innovation, labor and employment, and more recently on strengthening the role of women in society. More concretely, all those declarations refer to the need of reducing the mismatch between the skills of the labor force, we were talking about it this morning, tackling the evolving needs of the industry, as well as the shortage of attractive jobs in the blue and green sector. They also support green skills development by investing in a better coordination between the higher education and the VET systems, technology development transfer and innovation as key tools to support transition towards more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable economy. Sustainable economies have opened new careers pathways, incredibly beneficial in terms of job creation in a region where renewable energy holds such an unexpressed potential and where we experience high level of graduate unemployment. On average, however, this requires additional yet urgent reflections on knowledge and skills. For instance, green competences may be leveraged as a way of reducing the gaps between education systems and job markets. We were talking about it together this morning with BMZ and of course DG Employment. A prerequisite enabler is closer dialogue among all pillars of society, including academia, governments, the business sector, the civil society, in a way that is mindful of the environment. This, in my view, would foster green innovation, economic development, and job creation for our growing student population. At the same time, it would be a key ingredient in supporting the green and digital shift needed by our countries. Our Minister of Research and Innovation have highlighted earlier this year the role of science in preparing the field for sustainable economic development in our region, agreeing on specific research and innovation roadmaps. Finally, the recently adopted Ministerial Declaration on Women Environment 2 weeks ago in Madrid recognized that a gender-responsive transition, and that's very important, has the potential to create decent and sustainable jobs for women, being aware that discriminatory social norms and roles and persistent gender gaps in secondary and tertiary education in science, technology, engineering, what we call the STE and the STM, because you have to include mathematics, as well as occupational segregation, keep young women from attaining quality jobs in the green economy and in climate, environment, and disaster risk area. They committed our minister to create the enabling condition to a full, equal, meaningful participation of women in the green economy to comply with global trends, more gender-responsive climate finance, such as recent integration of gender consideration into key multilateral climate finance mechanisms, including the Green Climate Fund, are steps in the right direction. The UFM will closely cooperate with the European Commission to create a stronger impact on the region in the framework of the upcoming EU program on transition to green and circular economy and access to innovative finance for women-led business in the southern neighborhood. These are just a few examples of commitments and action towards our shared goal. There are, as we call it, the low-hanging fruits to be picked through just transition and a common will to make it happen. And this is why we are very much looking forward to a rich and enlightening panel today. I cannot close my comment without thanking our partners in DG Employment and BMZ/GIZ, that's how I say it, who are, or without them, the UFM agenda on employment and investment would not have been possible if it wasn't for their generous involvement, engagement, contribution, and financial support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamal, for your statements introducing our panel. If I read the signs right, we continue first. Okay. I think the minister is arriving shortly, but you will give us a sign when she does, and then she can come up and give a statement here. So we will start with our dear, excellent panelists here for today. Thank you for having come, for having joined us. I think the stage has been prepared by the speech, by the introductory words of Nasser Kamal. For the region, for the Mediterranean region, the challenges are really at hand. We can see them, we can almost grab them. And the green transition and the transition to new skills and new jobs actually in the region really need to be tackled, as these are the things that are ahead of us. If the whole transformation is to make sense, it has to create jobs, and people need to be ready to take these jobs. May I start with looking at your experience in the European Union, Mr. Joost Korte for DG Employment. What really are you looking at? Because I mean, the European Union is looking at similar problems, especially in challenges, especially in the Mediterranean region, high unemployment rates, a transformative action needed there. Thank you. Can you tell us about the plans, the instruments the EU is putting in place to achieve, and especially achieve, a fair green transition, which is inclusive for all groups?
Thank you very much, Regina, and let me start by thanking you for your kind invitation to be in this fantastic Mediterranean pavilion, which is, I think, the first time ever that we have such a pavilion in COP, so that's good. Yesterday I had the pleasure, together with Erik, open the ILO EU pavilion on just transition. So we're very active, and I can only congratulate everybody with that. But I think your question was already putting the right emphasis. I mean, I would say that the European Union and the Mediterranean region are in this together. I think the minister's coming. Shall I?
Thank you. Her Excellency, the Minister of Environment for Egypt has arrived. So we will give her the introductory. Minister, very well. Happy to have you here on our panel. And I would very much like you to ask you to give a statement from here. It's our panel on the just transition for employment, especially looking at youth and women. And I think you have plenty of experience also from Egypt in that area, and you may talk to us from here, from up here, and use the microphone that is there. Thank you, Minister.
You can hear me well, right? Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's just a beautiful morning that starts with the Youth Day, is one of the thematic days for COP27 presidency. I'm really glad that most of the pavilions are still discussing the same issues that COP27 presidency is putting on the agenda, especially the Mediterranean pavilion. Not only because our region, the Mediterranean, is one of the most to the impact of climate change from the perspective of scarce water resources, population, differences between the countries within the northern and the southern Mediterranean. So decoupled challenges makes us look here and say what will happen to the youth and the future generations. Thanks to Ambassador Nasser Kamel for bringing the just transition for the green economy in the heart of the discussion of the Youth Day. At the very outset, there are some important figures that I've been digging last night in order to prepare for today's discussion. Those figures are stunning, but they are important to let us think a little bit how best can we deal with the future generations in the just transition world. First of all, if we look at a sector like renewable energy, a sector that's bankable, that's profitable, that we can say in 2022, although we have an energy security crisis, that the technologies could be affordable. It brings around different scales at the small, at the medium, and at the large, and we can still work on that. That sector in 2019 gathered and opened around from 12 to 15 million jobs around the Mediterranean, which is a huge number. Secondly, if we come to take a counter argument to that, which is a sector that relates to the mining or the oil and gas, within the next 10 years, those sectors would simply turn out from the youth and the jobs that are being there. So they have to be replaced. Thinking of what best that can be done for the Mediterranean region and for the youth, especially the women, I would not leave that room without mentioning the water. The water is a critical issue for our region. And from that perspective, we need to think of how can we together, as the renewable came up to be a success story from 2015 till 2022, that's when Paris started to be born until now, we would like to think how best can we adapt. How best can we adapt would mean water for the Mediterranean. And from that perspective, we need to think of three important factors combining one another. Number one, regional cooperation and integration and knowledge sharing among the generation of the southern and the northern Mediterranean. Secondly, affordable technologies and scientific knowledge that should be shared, because today we are in the Science and the Youth Thematic Day. Thirdly, the finance and how can the banking sector, especially the MDBs, instead of just thinking of the ready piecemeal of the large investment, provide a package for small, medium projects as well as entrepreneurs that will enable them from the regional integration, from the affordable technologies to come up with those kinds of ideas that could be tested, as well as de-risking tools for that kind of activities. It's not a big bulk of money, but it's important to accelerate our action for the implementation to combat climate change. I think that this session is very crucial to throw those food for thought for the panelists. I know we have an excellent moderator here, and I'm sure she has prepared some questions, but I just wanted to throw that because that's a cup that we call it Together for Implementation. So together, hand in hand, science, youth, partners, Mediterranean countries and region will prove to the world on the 18th of November in Sharm el-Sheikh that the environmental multilateralism did not lose its credibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very grateful Minister Fouad took the time to join us for her statement here in this round and really putting into the spotlight the topics to be discussed on our panel. She mentioned regional cooperation, she mentioned, of course, the finance, but she mentioned also the technologies that are needed, and we want to take forward our discussion now on really on the skill side, on the labor market side, how to make use of the opportunities that are there, of the creation of new jobs, but really in preparing the countries and the labor force for that future. Just, I would like to take it up. You had started to explain about how the EU is addressing this like triple demand probably on our labor markets there.
Yeah, thanks again. I was just saying that listening to the first interventions, looking at the facts on the ground, my first message would be that the European Union and the Mediterranean region are in this together. I think this is a very important point to make. It's very hard for us in Europe to imagine any solution to the climate challenge without a very strong cooperation with the region that we're now in, the Mediterranean region. That's why and also the various activities deployed in the Union for the Mediterranean, the various projects, the ideas, the contacts are extremely important. For the energy supply, to begin with, the alternative energy supplies, the non-carbon ones, but also I think there's a lot to be said about upskilling and reskilling people. Legal migration, I think, is also a very important element here that I just would like to mention. I mean, anyway, on the European side, on the EU side, what can I say? I think the debate about climate change as a threat is over, in the sense that everybody is convinced. If you look at all the polls, all the opinion polls, all the political parties, serious political parties, all the governments are behind this. That's why now it is so interesting to see that we are moving to a next step. And that's where the just and the fairness of the measures that are needed to address the climate change challenges are so prominently coming up. I think nobody contests the need to do things. And in Europe we have it actually in the law. I mean, the 55% reduction by 2030 is in the law. People will go to court in 2030 if this hasn't been achieved. And there are 13 other legislative procedures ongoing, which will all be adopted, I'm sure. They will be adopted next year, and then we'll have everything in place. So that's not the issue. The issue is the acceptance in society, and will this burden, which it is, be evenly and justly distributed over the population? I think that is the essential question. That's why I was so happy that we have this specific pavilion with the ILO that addresses these considerations. And the ILO has done a lot of good work on this with their guidelines. One element that is particularly relevant here, which I would like to bring up, as you mentioned also, is the skills. It is also clear that we will not be able to manage this transition without a very massive investment in skills of the people. It's clear from all the analysis that I have seen that we do not have the people, and we do not have the people with the right skills. This is, I think, also something that is generally accepted. And we are now also in the process with member states to really set up very ambitious programs to invest in this part of human capital. If we get this right, and let me stop on a very positive note, if we get this right, I think the climate change is actually going to be beneficial for our economies. We will generate new jobs, cleaner jobs, better jobs, but it is not something that will happen by default. It requires real political action and courageous politicians.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the trends are there, they are seen and they are accepted, but it is still a joint challenge to really move in that direction. Birgit Pickel from the German Federal Ministry for Development Cooperation. We know that the just transition has been a focal point also on the German side. It has been adopted as one of the overarching concepts in your ministry. What does it really mean? What does it encompass? The just transition to a greener future? When you look at jobs or what has just been said, what does it all entail from your side?
Thank you very much, Regina. And first of all, let me also thank the UFM for the invitation, gathering all of us here. And thanks also for the strong words from the minister to set the scene. Indeed, as Regina said, not only addressing climate change, but doing it in a way that leaves no one behind, that is inclusive, has been and is a priority for the German government. What does it really mean? I think in these days, and also in these in the international setting in which we are now operating, it is important to do both, to really look at transforming economies, to green the economies in all sectors. It's energy, it's water, it's construction, mobility and so on, but to do it in a way that takes society along. We all know this process has winners and losers, and just looking at my own country in Germany, we have two major regions that used to be strong coal production regions. And looking at these regions now, the structural change they've gone through and the programs that needed to be put in place deliberately to address the question of labor, of skills, of upskilling and reskilling those affected, but also immediately also looking at the next generation, the young people, the young persons coming to the labor market to fit into these jobs which actually are in future sectors. That is important. So the skills aspect and the DG from Brussels, and of course Germany being a member state of the EU, we are working together very closely on this and are following the same objectives here. It's the skills issue we need to look at, but also just implies, and this is also a priority my minister Svenja Schulze from BMZ has defined for our work, is to really look at social protection as well, because there will be those that maybe cannot be reskilled. You know, it's just a reality that you have to address. So social protection schemes as part of a just transition, that is also part of the just of this important process towards a greener economy, a greener future, is very, very important. Just briefly on skills. You might know this, German Development Corporation has been active on technical vocational training, skills development, employability for many, many years. It's almost like a, I don't want to say trademark, but anyway, it's a large area of our corporation. But maybe in the past we have not looked as much as the green part of skills. And this is something that is new now. We are still holding the G7 presidency on the German side till the end of the year. And we're very happy that as a G7 we agreed to significantly increase the share of our official development assistance in support of green jobs and green skills and the greening of traditional sectors like construction, for example. So this commitment is there. We are already on a positive path on the German side, but we need to do more, and it's good to do that together with the G7, of which the European Commission is also part. So last issue I want and I need to mention, we are doing this from the German side with a particular focus in the Mediterranean, and we are talking about this region here today, on women and the youth. We know that only 1 of 5 women is employed. We know that many young people here are unemployed. So let's bring the skills development, looking at the employability of the next generation and the green transition together by particularly focusing on these two groups to integrate them into the labor market and to give them a better future. And I need to mention this as a last point. We have come together with other European member states and the Commission in a Team Europe approach. It's the only regional Team Europe initiative in the Mediterranean region which addresses the creation of jobs through trade and investment. And I would also say that when we started this initiative, there was a strong focus on jobs and trade. And I think we are now also in the process of further greening this initiative to address a just transition process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Birgit. Yeah, that is actually the case as part of the cooperation with the UFM Secretariat in greening the skills and employment initiative in the future phase. So thank you for mentioning that. It is really the trend that we are all addressing there. To you, Erik Oxlin from the ILO. You're based in the region, you're based in Cairo, so you're in addition to the ILO being a key player, obviously, and when it comes to what are the jobs of today, what are the decent jobs of tomorrow, playing a big role as an institution also in providing us with the data, with analysis of where the trends are going. But then you as a person combine it with your knowledge of this region. So maybe you could provide us a bit with your insights. So where do you see the region moving? Where do you actually see the demand for greener jobs going before we then come to the issue of how do we match that demand? But is it there? Where is it developing? What gives you hope for the region that there's opportunity there?
Well, thank you. And first also I would like to thank UFM and the different partners for inviting me. I'm the director of the Cairo office of the ILO, but also the Decent Work team for North Africa. And yes, the issue of climate change is quite important. And the fact that Egypt proposed to host COP27 is also a signal of the importance of climate change and the consequences of climate change on the country of the region, and especially Egypt. The minister mentioned the issue of water. It's not the drinkable water or the water for agriculture, it's also the issue of the level of the Mediterranean Sea. You know, there is 1 more meter. Large part of the Delta region will be not only covered by water, but also the soil will be with salted water, which will affect the agriculture. If you travel in Egypt, you will see, of course, small villages with quite important part of poverty, and that why there are some initiative launched by the president called Aya Karima, which is really to provide support to these villages. It's also to promote, it's to provide infrastructures, it's to provide soft skills, and we have projects to develop even the supply chain in these villages. It's also to see how we can extend social protection. As you mentioned, it's also a key point, and especially with the just transition process, we need to have mechanism to provide protection to the workers. And we developed some green technology like biogas, which is using the waste and to have production of gas at the level of a house. Then we are working on the field on this specific area. But what is missing is that's what the purpose of the discussion is, of course, the skills. We know that climate change will lead to creation of jobs. Okay. We know that climate change will lead to creation of jobs. Of course, will destroy jobs. No, according to our estimate, there will probably a positive balance, except for the Arab states, where there will be a negative balance in terms of employment, but mainly because of the Gulf countries. But that means that, yes, but what is important is how we ensure the just transition. And that's where the ILO is an actor, and I would like to thank the DG also for his kind words about the ILO work. How we can provide the support to the government in terms of integrated policy, or to promote social dialogue, which is relatively also not as good as possible in the south part of the Mediterranean Sea, or to identify the future skills. That's why the role of the business association are key. It's also to see how we can anticipate the future skills and the green skills. That we have programs with the different ministry of not only labor, but also of education or higher education, to see how we can develop new curricula which will take into account the green aspect. And that's why we have developed this climate action for jobs with 49 countries until now. Also the Green Jobs for Youth Pact, which launched yesterday also with the presence of the DG, with UNEP and UNICEF, is to see how we can develop specific action for young people. Then I will stop here to lead the time for discussion.
Thank you. Maybe I will give Birgit the chance to react one more time to what has just been said, looking more into the region and what is actually happening here. Of course, beyond this project with the UFM, the German corporation has a number of programs ongoing. You mentioned the vast portfolio in technical vocational education and training, and you mentioned the special focus on women and youth that is upcoming. So maybe you want to shed a bit more light on how this all combines in an approach to cooperate really with the region, but also on the German side, you know, to also refocus a little bit of what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Regina, for bringing me in here and giving me the space. Indeed, it's really the question of, you know, we all know that transforming these economies it's a major task, and it's all actors of society, government, private sector, research, civil society, you know, all players that need to come together to make such a change really work. What we from and to really also, and this is then country specific, but also as the minister said, across countries, looking at regional cooperation and regional integration potential. We all know that, for example, in the Mediterranean region, you have a major potential for renewable energies. And what we have been doing in many countries like Tunisia and Morocco, for example, is not only invest through our technical and financial cooperation programs from the German side in in expanding the technical part of things, new solar panels and so on, quite large scale schemes, but always bring that together also with the investment into the skills area. I think that is important. Just you know, we're working on that in Morocco, but also Tunisia, for example. Also, I think in terms of skills, there's a large potential when you want to address the youth and women again, but not exclusively, but put the focus on the ladies here. There is a huge potential in entrepreneurship. I was actually just recently participating in a competition where universities from across the globe presented students. They presented programs on all in the environmental sector on how to transform. And they're all startups. They're all young. They're all sort of young entrepreneurs. One that presented their ideas in the mobility sector, in the renewable energy sector, and with a bit of seed funding, they come up with their own businesses, and we complement that, for example, also with skills training. So you invest in the actual, government skills training systems, but you also invest in the financial inclusion, providing the funding for such initiatives once the skills are there. And you also invest directly in the skills training. I think I've already mentioned the Team Europe initiative for good jobs through trade. This is a major endeavor. Partners come together to put on the table 2.8 billion euros to invest in jobs, skills, employability, trade, but also the framework conditions, the right policies to be put in place in these countries towards creating sustainable and decent jobs. and Germany is contributing 500 million euros to this. Let me just give you a couple more examples from the work we are doing. In Tunisia, for example, we have been providing support to 250 enterprises that in the end made it possible to install more than 17,000 photovoltaic systems that in the end do not only provide energy to 350,000 households, but also looked at the skilling part of things. So this is a very concrete example. Let me maybe stop here. I could give you a lot more examples, very concrete from different countries, and Germany is certainly not the only country. Many others are investing as this as well. But it was important for me to, and let me close by this, to again stress getting the skills, getting the employability of young people and women in place requires, it's a multi-stakeholder process. It requires governments to come in to create the conducive policies. Continued policy dialogue on this is needed. How to green the economy, how to address at the future sectors where the jobs are, to make them good sectors. And we are really believing in the UFM here as a policy platform in the Mediterranean to have that dialogue in countries, but also between countries, on how it can actually work. What are the success stories on skills creation and investment in this green economy? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Birgit. I think that was really useful in shedding more concrete light on where the action is being taken and what is possible with those approaches. Joost, back to you. And I'm German, and we experience in Europe that we have a dear scarcity or a dear need for technicians. Sometimes more, it appears anyway, from practical ways of looking at it, than for academic skills in some of the areas. So I think Europe has a similar problem that we also know from this region. From your experience and background of tackling and addressing this, making technical skills, recognize them and making them more attractive. Is there anything you have to say from that background that could be, useful for this region when you look into that future?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think what you're asking me is also exactly the reason why Ursula von der Leyen announced that 2023 will be the European Year of Skills. So all these considerations have given her this idea to identify next year as the European Year for Skills. This year is still the European Year of Youth. Next year will be of Skills, and I think the two are also very linked, because it is clear that the skills are not there, and it's also true that if you look at the profile of the young people in Europe, that there are in fact too many people with a university degree compared to people with technical skills. And I think I don't know, I feel myself also guilty in a way, because obviously we all want our children to go to university. We want them to become a doctor or a political scientist or lawyers, but in fact this is not necessarily what society needs more. We need people who are engineers, and not even engineers, also real craftsmen, technical craftsmen. And one of the things we have done in the European Union quite successfully is also to improve the profile and the reputation of technical education, of vocational education and training, or technical education. And I think this is very important, that this is not a suboptimal choice or a second choice. If you're not good enough for university, you go to technical year. I think this is a big mistake, and we are paying a big price for this. It was very encouraging, therefore, when I was in Cairo the day before yesterday. I actually visited the Ministry for Education and Technical Education, as it is called here. They mentioned both, And I was very impressed by the big ambitions and good intentions and programs that have been put in place to do precisely that, to improve the profile, to make it a very, very laudable career path. And the second important point is also that we need to also work together, Europe and this region, on the competence framework. Because one of the problems we have is so difficult to compare skills. How do you qualify a skill? How do you recognize a skill? And I think this is also a very important project, that we have some sort of a harmonized grid, that somebody who is a train driver in Egypt, who qualified as a train driver in Egypt, can also subsequently work in the European Union. I think this is also, these are very promising projects where I think we are, on the analysis and on the political direction, we are very aligned. There's no real discussion about the purpose or the strategy. What is very difficult, as always, is to then actually implement it. To implement it and turn it into something that is practical, that is operational, that is usable, and that actually benefits our societies.
Great, thank you very much. I think really in Germany we are currently experiencing that the energy transition is a little bit delayed by the fact that we don't have enough engineers to actually work on it. It's the regulations are there, the ambition is there, it's all clearly spelled out, but it's difficult to achieve. And that is certainly something, you know, this region with all its opportunity should be prepared for and really see into this, that otherwise these jobs won't be taken, and then the transition is actually not happening maybe because of that. So with that, Eric, once more back to you. What is your expectation and what do you see on the government's side really in this region? What would they need to tackle, both maybe in the educational systems, maybe in the labor markets, really some changes that you would define as key in preparing for that path and deblocking maybe a few bottlenecks?
Well, thank you. I will take the example of Egypt because based in Egypt, and even I've been in Egypt for more than 10 years now, and I've also seen the evolution of Egypt in the last years. What is missing is probably, yes, to have a more integrated approach. There's a lot of issues. You mentioned the labor market, and also, Birgit, you mentioned the fact that women participation on the labor market is around 24%. Here it's the same in the North Africa countries or in the Arab states. Then they need clearly to have some incentives or some mechanism like the development of a care economy, for instance, to encourage women to access the labor market. And now we are working now on with the Minister of Social Solidarity to see how we can develop the care economy. The same with the young people. The unemployment among young people is quite high in Egypt. It's not the case for the whole population. In Egypt, the unemployment is relatively low, but it's also linked to the fact that the informal economy is still strong. But with an integrated approach, it's when we not only will discuss the labor market issue, but also the industrial policies, the more general environmental policies. We can identify the skills in that sense. We can anticipate. And that's what we discuss now with the government in terms of kind of establishment of national qualification framework that exists in some countries. It's not a perfect model, but at least we can anticipate the needs of the business in the coming years. And then we can adapt the TVET system. That's also what we are working, and also GIZ is also working on this issue in Egypt to adapt the curricula to the labor market needs. With this, and that we need to anticipate. We don't need to react, and that's the problem of, I think, of most countries are react to the situation. We need more to anticipate what are the needs and what are the green needs in that sense in terms of development of skills. But then, and that's why we need to work all together as UN agencies, national implementing partners, international implementing partners like GIZ or AFD, to see exactly what we can be done, and I hope that UFM also can support us to continue also this process of to develop the right anticipation measures for that. And that's what we try to do in supporting the Egyptian government, but also in the region in general around the Mediterranean Sea.
Thanks a lot. I was wondering with Ambassador here to my side whether you are now more of an Egyptian than you are, and because you spend so much time abroad outside of your country. I would address the last question and ask you to wrap up as well, Nasser. Looking again at the side of really that women, the role of women in this transition. We see the salination of the ground has been mentioned, the water problem by the minister earlier. That is something that the whole region is really scrambling with, and agricultural jobs means jobs for women as well. So some of them might be losing or might have to move on or might have to reskill as well. And we know that there are a number of bottlenecks for them that are more specific, coming from educational side, access to digital means, access to finance, safe ways of transport where they would want to move to new jobs. Maybe from your experience and what you think, again, from this, what we're trying to address through the grant schemes from the UFM, what should we be tackling, what should we really be focusing when it comes to women?
Thank you very much. But as we know, the notion of a housewife has been born with the Industrial Revolution. Humanity has never differentiated between men and women when it came to the job market until the job was being performed in a different place outside of the house. And that is happening as we speak in our part of the region, because, and you mentioned correctly, the informal economy in Egypt is the one where most of our women are working. So the official number of women employment are not really reflecting the reality of women involvement in the job market. But that's not, I'm not saying that as a positive element, because women working in the informal economy, they are not protected, they are subject to different form of abuse, and I'm not talking about harassment, I'm talking about work condition and payment and social security, etc., etc., etc. In a region that has also another paradox, the number of university graduates who are women in Egypt and North Africa exceeds the number of university graduates who are men. I would even go one step further. The number of women choosing to study engineering, mathematics, medicine is increasing exponentially. So I'm telling you, women are very active in the informal economy. They are overtaking men when it comes to higher education. Why the rate of employment is around 20% only, and why within those 20% there is 20% of women who are unemployed. This is the real question we need to be thinking about between national government and development agency and of course the European Commission. Is it a mismatch of skills? Is it, as you said, a gender bias approach to employment with the idea that women would disappear for a number of years because she wants to start a family and have children? Or is it not providing a safe environment for women when it comes to transport, workplace, etc., etc.? Or is it that they are not being pursuing education that is giving them the necessary skills to be able to access the job market, and especially the job of the future. I don't have the answer to this. I'm the diplomat here. But I think, and when we know, and the studies show, that if women are fully employed in the MENA region, our GDP will increase by more than 50% or in the next few years. So it's a huge potential to unlocking our real growth potential, and it's an important driver to achieve social justice within our society. So what we're doing together within, of course, the Team Europe initiative that you at the Commission, with the great help of Germany, because Germany was at the center of that, but also France, Spain, and others, with what the Commission is doing also within the neighborhood policy when it comes to its investment plan, which is focusing on employment, and especially green employment, with coupling our ambitious environmental and climate action projects and initiative. Maybe we could link those to skilling and reskilling, as you say, our women and our youth to take full advantage of, she mentioned, the minister, $12 billion of investment in solar. I happen to know, because I visited, I'm no expert, that solar is one of the most labor-intensive jobs. So I know I said many things, maybe they're not that connected, but these are the questions in my mind when I look at things from far behind. And I think the job of the experts here and the diplomats and the technocrats is to try to find solution to all those questions and make them work for us instead of working against us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will use this as closing words. Thank you so much to the panelists for sharing your views and experiences. For me, it was quite insightful, and I think lots of opportunities there, but nothing will just happen by itself. There is work to do. Thank you.